Hey guys, drdecks here. Today we're gonna give you a build update of where we're at with our progress since the last time we did a build update. So thanks for coming to our channel. I really appreciate it. Don't forget while you're here to please click that subscribe button, as only 18% of you do, and we want to get that ratio up. All right, so I think the last time you saw us, we had our posts installed, we had our beams installed, and we were installing some bracketry. Since then, most of our bracketry is installed. We're short a few bolts we're waiting on from an order, so we'll get those in as soon as they come in. But we've managed to basically get all of our joists installed on this entire deck, and we're running some perimeter blocking right now for some surface borders. Besides that, basically that's what the last few days have been, is strictly joist installation. So we can go over and take a look at that and show you how we did it. All right, so basically it took me almost a full day in between other tasks to lay out this entire deck. This deck is 850 square feet. It needed a lot of joists. I like to space my framing accordingly so that it has equal spacing throughout. And I like to bring my spacing of joists in a little bit compared to standard joist spacing, which is usually around 16 inches on center. For this deck, we're around 14 inches on center, and that just gives a little bit stiffer travel between deck boards, when the deck board between the joists, it gives you a little bit less flex, a little sturdier feel to the feet. And it's also better for our spans, which we're not really overspanning this particular deck. I think the biggest span on a 2x8 is about 7 feet, so it's not real big. But we basically had to attach every joist to the side of the house. We did that with a finish gun to start, and then we put a Simpson code-approved strong tie joist hanger, Z-Max joist hanger around every joist, and then we toe-nailed everything with 3 nails to each beam connection. So wherever the joist crosses over the top of a beam, it has 3 nails opposing. So 2 on one side, 1 on the other, going into the beam. And that's in 2 locations on this side of the deck. And then once our bracketry, we have some other bracketry on order that is a little L clip or a 90 that will screw to the joist and to the beam, and that'll be our positive connection, because when you're building a deck, you got to have positive connections, especially when it's being inspected. So you have to have a positive connection from the footing to the post, from the post to the beam, and from the beam to the joist. There has to be a positive load connection so that in a serious uplift situation, that this deck can't go flying away in the wind or anything like that. We don't really get that kind of wind here, but it does happen occasionally, and we do get tornadoes in a very rare occasion once in a while. So it's just a code requirement that we have to build to, and that's what we're doing. Let's go over and look at our punch list. We'll talk about that. All right, so all you new deck builders out there, or those DIYers, you've heard it a million times. It's called the punch list. So what I do is I grab a piece of cardboard and a black Sharpie, and I just start writing things down that I know that we need to get completed. Because it always feels good to be able to scratch something off the list, right? So I made a list of things that we need to accomplish, tasks that need to be completed. The guys are working on that stuff right now. So on my list for today, I have some ladder blocking, which Jose is doing right now. We need to tape all the joists and all the rims. Dustin's working on that. We need to bring up plywood and spread it, because what we're doing, I don't know if I explained this yet, but as far as this build update goes, we're actually building another deck on top of this deck. So we're putting a 16 by 20 waterproof deck above this. This is a 16 by 42, and then there's another 8 by 25 around the corner, and that's 850 square feet. And then we're adding a 16 by 20 on top of this deck. And that's why we have these big, massive beams, these big glulam beams that are installed, so they'll take the engineering and the weight, the math. We had this whole deck engineered by a local engineer in our region that calculated everything out to make sure that the structural loading of what we did was acceptable. We got to spread the plywood so we can get our ladders up there. We brought a bunch of plywood that we can lay down on top of the joists after they're taped. We did a demo where we tore everything down, but we just basically cut the joists about a foot away from the house. Now we have to go in and do our high detail work. So if you look up at this deck, you'll see that all the joists are still sticking out from the inside of the house, because that deck was actually a free floating deck. So all those joists cantilevered from the inside of the house out. We're gonna cut all those back and seal all those up, because if we don't, there's a potential, well, we just can't. We can't do what we wanna do and reuse that framing. It's already getting soft. And if you let those joists weather and get soft, eventually they're gonna rot, and then they'll rot all the way into the house, and then you have major problems. Now you're ripping up your floors and your carpets and hardwoods, whatever, to fix it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean all that up. We're gonna pull off all the decorative trim and siding and anything that's in our way. We're gonna cut all those joists back flush to the house, and then we're gonna waterproof it, and then we'll put on our new ledger. So that's the steps that we're gonna take there. So that's on the list. Then we also need to add blocking for our railing. So on this deck, we're doing crystal rail. It's a beautiful frameless glass system. I gotta figure out all the layouts for that, and we have to install all of our crystal rail blocking into the deck, so we gotta do that. We have to install 2 posts for the upper deck as well and frame those into the existing deck that we have now. And there's also V-bracing. So this is probably more work than what we're gonna accomplish in the next couple days. But again, having it on a punch list, and I'll keep adding to this. I just leave this pen right here, and as we accomplish tasks, I'll scratch them off, and then I'm always adding more, like, you know, as we get closer to finished work, I'll be like, oh, we gotta trim the deck, do our fascia, we need to do this, we need to do that, run our wiring, staple wiring. Anything that doesn't get completed or that needs to get completed on this job goes onto a punch list. And then we have one place where everybody can walk up and go, okay, hey, I got nothing to do. What's next? Oh, I got V-bracing to do. Okay, then I'll knock that out. It's kind of things like that. So I think that's an update, man. That's where we're at. Now let's go see how we're making progress. All right, guys, so everybody's on their own individual tasks. Dustin is G-taping the tops of the joists, which help protect the tops of the frame from premature moisture, from any screws or fasteners that penetrate. This is self-sealing tape, so any fasteners that go through will seal the tape to help protect the joist that way. Any sediment, fir needles, and there's a couple different types of trees out here that drop different types of needles and sediment in between the deck board cracks. It'll protect the joist from that as well, because that's the first place that joists are gonna rot, is in between where the deck boards are laid. Just gives us a nice way to shed water as well. So he's doing that. Jose is putting in the rest of our alternate surface border blocking for our patterns that we're gonna be running on this deck. So that takes some time as well. He's handling that. While those guys are doing that, I'm starting to do the layout for our crystal rail, because we have to put solid blocking everywhere we have a crystal rail pod, okay? So I'm starting off by doing, the first section I'm doing is where I know that the deck has 2 posts coming out for the upper deck. So I had to identify those 2 posts, and then I took a distance. It was 208 inches, and then I had to subtract 2 inches because we're wrapping the posts in multi-width. So I did that. So that gave me a residual width of 206 inches. Now Regal makes, the glass is pre-made. It goes from 2 foot, and it increases from 2 foot to 5 foot in 6-inch increments. So 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, and 60 inches. Those are the lengths I have to work with when I'm laying this out. So what I did was I took 206 inches and I divided it by 4 panels to see where I would end up. That gave me a residual of 51.5 inches. But I know that, okay, I can't get 51.5 inch glass, plus I still have to add for gaps for between the glass. So the next size down from 51.5 is 48. So I took 48 inches as my glass size, and then I added those together, and that gave me 192 inches. And then I subtracted that from my overall width of 206, and that gave me a 14-inch residual. So I have to divide that by 5 spaces because there's 4 panels of glass, so there's a gap at each post, and then a gap in between each piece of glass, which is 5. So if I divide 14 inches by 5, it gave me a residual of 2 13/16 gap in between each pane of glass. So for this one section, in between these 2 deck posts, I'm gonna have 48-inch pieces of glass with a 2 13/16 inch gap in between the glass. So now what I gotta do is I gotta identify on the deck where each one of these crystal rail pods is gonna go to hold the glass. Once I figure that out, then I can actually identify where all of our solid blocking needs to go in this section of the deck to support our crystal rail. So that's what I'm doing right now, is doing that. And that's gonna take a minute. And I need to get that done by the time I leave today so the guys can get these blocks installed tomorrow while I'm out of town. All right, guys, thanks for watching today. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed our progress report, our build update. And if you did, don't forget to click that subscribe button. Hit the bell icon to be notified every time we're putting out fresh content. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, and I'll pick one of you to enter a Block Loader t-shirt. Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.